All right. Well, I am here with Robin Smith. She is my mother-in-law, the mother of my wife, which normally that's what mother-in-law means. She is a secretary at the church that her and her family attend, and I just wanted to ask her a couple questions on what it's like being a church secretary. So I guess first question is, what are some tasks that a church secretary might have at a church, or that you do yourself?
Well, I do the bulletin, make sure the correct information is in it, along with the pastor, making sure, proofreading, printing. I handle the finances as far as paying bills, writing checks.
So you're serving almost as a treasurer and a secretary at the same time for the church, or?
Sort of.
Okay.
I do, a lot of my job has to do with finances. I make sure the calendar is up to date. When there are events, like youth group going to fine arts, I coordinate things, reserving hotel rooms, making sure that all of the permission slips are in, registration forms, send that off. Also with camp.
Wow. Okay. That's all. That's very helpful. I know that's something for myself, and then for my wife, her daughter. That's something. All those tasks that were described, depending on what church you're at. If you don't have a secretary, that's something that either falls on the pastor or even the pastor's wife. Like my wife, she does the bulletin for our church. She also does a church calendar, and then when it comes to scheduling events for like men's retreat or youth camps, that falls on myself and making sure those registration forms gets into where they need to go. How many hours do you put in a week as a church secretary?
About 15 hours a week.
Okay.
It's kind of flexible.
And I'll let you choose to answer this or not. Is it a paid position?
Yes.
Okay. And that's, I think, from my knowledge of all the secretaries that I know of, they have been paid. But I believe that there are those who volunteer and do work like that for the church. But in itself, that is a ministry of the church. It's just something that helps take the burden off the pastors there, whether that's a youth pastor, kids pastor, or even the senior pastor, and can help ministry work more effectively in the church. What are some challenges maybe of being a church secretary?
Well, being organized is an important thing. Making sure that things are taken care of, that nothing falls through the cracks. Of course, the pastor also helps with that. Since we have at our church been without a senior pastor, having an interim pastor for a few months, it's been more important for me to kind of make sure that things go forward and not fall through the cracks.
So has more, should we say, more responsibilities been put on you since you've had an interim pastor, not a full-time?
I feel it's pretty much the same responsibilities, but more important for me to just take note of things that maybe the pastor would have otherwise followed through on. And the chair of the board has been very helpful in this time to taking on extra responsibilities along with the interim pastor.
Yeah, that's good. I guess my final question for you then is, for someone, say a senior pastor, they have a secretary, what would be the best way for that senior pastor to better minister to that secretary, or maybe make their life easier? Let's ask that.
Well, I think good, clear communication is important. Making sure that you're both on the same page, knowing about events coming up, expectations of what you're expected to do.
Just having that clear communication.
I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, again, looking at all those responsibilities at our church there, how that falls between my wife and I, it's easy, although I don't always do the best job sharing all the information with her. Sometimes things do fall through the crack. With her, if she ever needs to know something whenever she's doing the bulletin, she'll just say, "Hey, David," whatever the question is, and get it answered right there. But if you have someone, if you're not married to the secretary, which my wife isn't officially the secretary, but I guess in ministry, that would be one of her titles. She does those jobs, but the communication line has to be even, maybe I should say, more purposeful to make sure that it goes through. But yeah, well, thank you for letting me ask you these questions on what it's like to be a church secretary. If you are thinking about being a church secretary or just helping out the church in those ways, I think the first step would be just to pray about it and make sure that God wants you to do it, because it is a ministry for the church. But then to go and approach your senior pastor and ask if there is those slots that are open that you can fill in for the church in that way, and use that as a ministry yourself. But with that, thank you guys for watching, and be blessed.